So the battle over the Texas border just got even more complicated, and we need to talk about what is now happening with some additional reviews and decisions which are now going to impact this issue. So let's talk about what is happening. Now, before we jump into this video, I want to tell you about one of the new sponsors and supporters of this channel, which is Home Title Lock. This sponsor can actually save you a lot of time, money, and honestly, a huge legal headache. I'm sure a lot of you are not aware that there is this big wave in a new kind of growing criminal activity that is targeting and stealing home titles without people even knowing. I decided to protect my home and my own home title through Home Title Lock. I've used their dashboard. It's very easy. It shows all the title activity. And really the best part is that if something does ever happen to you, their team over at Home Title Lock will handle the entire legal process and they will restore the title for you so you don't have to go through that headache. So I can't recommend them enough. It's super easy to use. And if you're interested, you can check them out using the link down below in the details section and also in the pinned comment. And right now they're offering you a free 30-day trial and a comprehensive title scan so that you can make sure that your property is actually safe. Now, as I mentioned in the intro, in this video, we're going to be talking about multiple decisions which are now impacting this issue over the Texas border and the crisis that is going on at the border. Things are getting even more complicated, and not only is there complications because of Supreme Court orders on this issue in other cases, but there's also a state of Iowa law that is very similar to SB4 in Texas dealing with the border crisis that is now being reviewed by a 8th Circuit Court of Appeals. That decision is now being used as additional support for why the state of Texas law here should be struck down by the 5th Circuit Court of Appeals, because as you may recall, the 5th Circuit Court of Appeals is currently set to decide on the Texas border law. This issue over the Texas border law is currently in the hands of the 5th Circuit, but multiple Supreme Court decisions on two-way topics and other topics, and now also lower court decisions and Circuit Court of Appeal reviews of a similar issue dealing with the Iowa border law is being used to influence the outcome and decision in the 5th Circuit. Texas SB4 effectively makes it a crime for any individual to violate federal law by crossing into the state of Texas at any location other than a lawful point of entry. It also gives some authority to the state officials there and then some judges to come in contact with these individuals and remove them from the state of Texas. This bill was challenged by the Biden administration, and on review, a district court issued a preliminary injunction preventing Texas from enforcing all aspects of SB4. The lower court in that case placed a universal preliminary injunction on SB4, and it broadly blocks the enforcement of this statute. The lower court found that SB4 was facially invalid. Texas then appealed that preliminary injunction up to the 5th Circuit, and in response, the 5th Circuit issued an administrative stay on that lower court universal order. Now, various cases were then consolidated, and then at that time, the plaintiffs filed for Supreme Court emergency intervention. Essentially, they wanted the Supreme Court to step in on an emergency basis, remove the 5th Circuit stay, and allow SB4 to still be blocked. But on review, the Supreme Court did not side with the Biden administration. Instead, he sided with the state of Texas and allowed this law to still be in place. The Supreme Court issued a 6-3 emergency order siding with the state of Texas. Now, after that 6-3 emergency order, the case was sent back down to the 5th Circuit, and shockingly, on review on its own, the 5th Circuit decided to remove their own administrative stay and move forward with reviewing the Texas law. Recently, there were oral arguments on this Texas law case, and the 5th Circuit sat as a panel, a 3-judge panel, reviewing this issue. Now, during those arguments, there were some concerns about if the United States government, the Biden administration, can even seek this type of universal equitable relief that they got from the lower court. As you may recall, like I mentioned, the lower court issued a universal block on SB4, and the question is whether or not the Biden administration can even seek that type of relief, and whether or not a lower court or any court should actually even grant a universal relief. There was a lot of dispute during the hearings, especially from one of the dissenting judges, Judge Oldham, who agreed with the state of Texas that the government cannot file this type of lawsuit and cannot get this type of universal relief. So the 5th Circuit heard arguments, and now we're currently waiting for the 5th Circuit to issue their decision. But as this has developed, now there have been some Supreme Court decisions on some other issues, some other two-way cases that have been submitted to try to influence what the 5th Circuit is going to rule on. And then also in the meantime, there has been a similar case which has developed out of other federal district courts dealing with another state law out of the state of Iowa, and that's Iowa Senate File 2340, which does something very similar to Texas SB4 in regards to immigration and trying to remove individuals and send them back if they are here illegally, and essentially trying to use state powers to enforce federal laws. Iowa Senate File 2340 is a law very similar to Texas SB 4 in its effort to essentially allow a state to enforce federal immigration laws. The Iowa law was challenged by the Biden administration in a case called the United States versus the state of Iowa, and another case that has now been heard in front of the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals. Now, recently in these cases, you had district courts review these issues and grant the Biden administration's request for a preliminary injunction. Again, that preliminary injunction temporarily blocks the state of Iowa from enforcing their law. Now, in this decision, the Iowa District Court stated that under binding Supreme Court precedent, Senate File 2340 is preempted in its entirety by the federal law and thus is invalid under the Supremacy Clause of the United States. The court therefore grants the motions for a preliminary injunction filed by the plaintiffs in these related cases and enjoins the enforcement of Senate File 2340 pending further proceedings. Here, the judge is citing the Supremacy Clause of the United States Constitution and then also the state constitution and other federal laws and treaties, and they're saying that those take precedent over what the Iowa law is doing here. And they also say that the federal law is field preempting what the state of Iowa is doing here as far as immigration. He went on to state in the opinion that as a matter of politics, the new legislation might be defensible, but as a matter of constitutional law, it is not. So here you have the judge saying maybe in practice he agrees with the political aspirations of the Iowa law, but constitutionally he does not believe that the state of Iowa can do this. Now, this Iowa decision and this Iowa law is very important because now it's being submitted in the Texas SB 4 case. And during the oral arguments in front of the 8th Circuit on this Iowa case, there was a lot of discussion about the Texas SB 4 law, which again, the Iowa law and the Texas law are almost identical. Now, interestingly, the district court here in the Iowa case said that the parties here should submit their case and some of the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals reviews to the 5th Circuit because the 5th Circuit is set to rule on a similar issue, and they want to use this case as some sort of influence on the outcome of the 5th Circuit decision. Now, what happened in some of these cases, since there was 2 Iowa lawsuits, one of the cases was stayed pending review of what's going on in another Iowa case, very similar. The 8th Circuit recently heard oral arguments back at the end of September on the Iowa law, the constitutionality of it, whether or not it is preempted, whether or not the state of Iowa law should be blocked, and whether or not that preliminary injunction should remain in place that was granted. So we are currently also waiting for the 8th Circuit to rule on this issue in Iowa. And then now we also have the 5th Circuit waiting, and we're waiting on their decision on a very similar issue. And I think what's happening here is both the 8th Circuit with the Iowa case and the 5th Circuit with the Texas case are probably going to wait to issue their decisions until after the election. The issue of immigration is a huge issue right now when it comes to the election. Both campaigns are using it very aggressively, to attack one another. And so I don't think that the 8th Circuit or the 5th Circuit want to step in, especially when it comes to a state issue of immigration, when it comes to a broader election, question of immigration. I don't think that they want to step in right now and issue an order. We'll probably see this happen before the end of the year, but probably after the election. There were some other cases that were also submitted to the 5th Circuit. You had some of the parties submit the Rahimi case, which was a Supreme Court 2A decision. They submitted that to the 5th Circuit to try to influence their decision. You also had the Biden administration use the Missouri Second Amendment preservation decision that came out of the 8th Circuit as additional influence for why the 5th Circuit there should side with the Biden administration. So this is a very important development with the Texas border lawsuit. We now have a clone issue of Iowa pending in front of the 8th Circuit. Oral arguments have happened, and now we're waiting for a decision. And now the Iowa case is also being submitted in the state of Texas lawsuit to try to persuade a decision from the 5th Circuit. But like I said, I don't think either the 8th Circuit or the 5th Circuit are going to issue their decision before the election concludes. I think that they just don't want to step on that type of issue. I don't think they want to open the can of worms on those issues, and they're going to wait, I think at the earliest, until the end of the year to issue their decisions, or maybe even until after the inauguration. So that's what's currently going on. A very interesting hearing that happened in Iowa with a very similar issue about the Texas border. And now we're going to be waiting for both the 8th Circuit decision and also the 5th Circuit decision about these types of immigration state laws. Also, if you like this video and you'd like to support the channel, one of the best ways to do that is to like, comment, and subscribe. All those things help to fuel the algorithm, and it signals to YouTube that you guys see value in these videos and in this type of 2A news. So as always, thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And never forget this nation was built by armed scholars, and this nation will be maintained by armed scholars.